Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 6 for the STEM Heroes podcast. I'm David Young. I'm talking with Keith Pritchett. He's a former Army helicopter pilot turned into a JROTC high school instructor where he leads his cadets through a lot of leadership stuff. And in his program, he integrated drones, taught them how to use drones, prepared them for the Part 107 exam, which allowed them to get their commercial drone license, which in the state of Alabama, where he is, that is something called a CRI, a career readiness indicator in the schools. Actually get reimbursed for that when the student's taken past that. And each student has to have one of those to graduate high school. So it's very pertinent in their state and they enjoyed it. They actually used some curriculum we had. So this is one of our customers, just kind of telling his story of his background, how he got into education, what he does with kids, and how he gets them excited about learning about STEM related careers, how that impacts them. So it's a great conversation. Keith is a really, really good guy. I've become friends with him over the last 2 years. So I hope you enjoyed this convo with me and Keith. Let's dive in. All right. So today on the podcast, I have with me Keith Pritchett. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Keith.
Sure, bud. I'm glad to be here.
Keith is actually one of the only people I knew before doing this podcast. Everybody else has been like a brand new. First time I'm ever seeing them is when I do the podcast. But I know Keith a little bit better because we've been working together a bit over the last, I don't know, year or 2 years maybe.
Yeah, June will be 2 years. I think
Yeah.
first time we started actually conversing there.
And then Keith's doing some pretty cool stuff, the JROTC program in Alabama with his cadets. So I'm excited to dive into it a bit today. Just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and just kind of tell about your background too and kind of how you came to be an educator.
Okay. I've retired from the military. I did 26 years. Figured it was time to actually go find a real job. So I went to the school system. It's been interesting here in the last 10 years of dealing with the programs here at the high school. It's been very interesting to watch this thing morph and to change and kind of headed in that direction. How it actually began was that the state of Alabama here provided the programs, JRTC programs, with some extra money for STEM work. My background is aviation. So when the state of Alabama provided the money there for STEM work, there were 2 areas they kind of wanted us to concentrate in or thinking about trying to support us in. One was computers, there was cybersecurity, and the other one was drones. Well, I have a hard time just turning a computer on. So I figured I want to stay away from that. But I figured my 26 years of aviation service, I kind of know a little bit about the aviation world. And so that's where we kind of delved into. I was very fortunate that the state said, here's your money that we want to support you with. I'll be honest with you there, Dave. I started calling around because I didn't want to have just a program or a support that says, hey, let's go out and just fly and have a good time. I wanted the students and my cadets to actually to learn something from this. And that's where you and I got involved. I asked around, and be honest with you, Dave, I talked to quite a few people and I said, okay, hey, where do I need to go to learn about how to do my Part 107? And everybody I talked to said, hey, you got to contact Drone Launch Academy. And so I said, all right, good deal. After 3 or 4 of these guys who I knew were drone pilots, and some of them were actually commercial flight instructors, that had credentials and stuff, they told me to contact you. I was like, all right, I'm headed in the right direction. And that's how you and I kind of got hooked up.
I never actually knew how you found us to begin with. So that's funny.
That's, yeah. And so I didn't want just a program of fun, but I wanted a program that the students could get something out of it so that when they graduated high school or whatever they wanted to do, we provided them then with a way to possibly make a living they so desired, or to scratch an itch in the aviation world that some of them may be interested. And so from there, you and I started talking.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
So tell us a little bit about your aviation background and what you did in the military. I think that's a cool story and kind of relevant to how you ended up teaching.
Okay. I started off back in 1988, entered the military as an air traffic controller and did that for a while.
Is there any difference between the military air traffic controllers and what you'd learn just to be regular kind of FAA
You
air
you
traffic
do go
controller?
through the same type of training, same type of background about on a way to deal with all the different traffic. The difference being is that, of course, with the military side of the house, especially the Army, is that you're more concerned about establishing a landing zone and things of that nature in a tactical world. The same processes, the same procedures all go into effect, and to include establishing of airfields if we have to for instruments, whatever it might be, flight following, it's all the same. In fact, once you finish, you can transition to the civilian world. Of course, you still need to go to the FAA course. It's kind of one of those things, you've got now a background in it. And
Yeah.
they're more receptive to you entering their domain.
Yeah.
After I did that for a little while, I was actually at the National Training Center in California and was doing air traffic control there and saw these young lieutenants that were getting off these Hueys and the OH-58s and the Army helicopters. And I said, well, those idiots can do it. I can do it too. So I request a release of my contract, and I went back to college to receive my degree and receive my commission, was accepted into flight school from there. So ended up at Fort Rucker, went through pilot training there.
Fort Rucker's in Alabama, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Just outside of Enterprise. Actually, it's in between the Enterprise and a little place called Delville. It's home of Army Aviation. Did that for a while, finished flight school, and then began my aviation career in the military. And I've done all kind of jobs from platoon leader to company commander, and then served on many different staff elements as I progressed through my military career.
Really cool. What was your rank when you ended up retiring from the military?
I ended up retiring as a lieutenant colonel.
That's awesome. For us non-military folks, how high up is that in the list?
If you can consider the officer rank and you go through 01, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to be an 05. An 06 would be a full bird colonel, and an 07 would be a brigadier general. So
Only 2 positions down. You were pretty high up there then, huh?
well, you stick around long enough, and I guess they'll promote anybody.
Hopefully.
But
That's
it's been
awesome.
fun. I enjoyed my military career. I enjoyed my time. What kind of gave me a transition was the last 3 years of my military service. I was a instructor at the Army Command and General Staff College, where I taught the Army tactics. I dealt with critical and creative thinking side house. So I did that for 3 years, which kind of get me into that platform-oriented type of structure, which to me was, once I retired and deciding where I'm going to go, the JROTC program to me was a natural transition to be able to still coach, mentor, and teach the future of America.
Yeah, so for JROTC, they have each different branch has their own JROTC, is that correct?
That's correct.
How does that work to become a JROTC instructor? I'm assuming you have to be in the military, have been like maybe retired military of that branch. Is that how it works?
Yes, for the Army, it's yes. You have to be retired military within the 3 years of retirement. There is an interview process you have to go through, a lot of background checks. And then once you're approved by Cadet Command to be an instructor, and then it's a process of actually trying to find a job or a school that has the ROTC program, and then
Okay.
getting involved through that. And then they coordinate with the military to ensure that all T's are crossed and I's are dotted for you to be an instructor.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering how that worked. I didn't know if it was just that like the schools posted, oh, we have an open Army JROTC instructor slot and anybody can apply, or if it's you work through the military side of it and they find a place to place you.
Right. Well, it's kind of a combination of both. I guess
Yeah.
the school does it, and then the military side house does it too. Information's out there for people to go and obtain.
So you've been doing JROTC, Army JROTC for 10 years, you said, in schools? Is that the whole time you've been doing that?
That is correct. I retired in 2014, and this is my 10th year.
All right. So JROTC, I know you guys do a lot of things in that program. What portion of the day is that for the students or the cadets?
It's a class period. Your English, your math, your science, your history as your core classes. In the correct career tech field, which is what I fall under, there are elective classes you can take. So whether you're taking agricultural or art or something along those lines, it's a class that you can take here at the high school.
Okay, great. In addition to, I know you guys had done some drone stuff when they wanted you to say, hey, you can do computer science or drones, but what are some other typical things you all are doing during that class time?
It's a leadership class. So as we go through and we're teaching the different curriculums, each year provides a little more information as they climb the ladder, if you will. And so that first year, they're learning how to put on a uniform. They're learning the rules and regulations. They're learning how to work together as a team and a team concept. In essence, learn the Army values that's so big into our program. And then that second year, we transition them more and we place them into more leadership positions so they can start practicing some of their leadership skills. And that year, a lot of focus on the government side of the house, even hands-on with the first aid type deal. And then that third year is when they actually really dig into things. And we place them in a lot of more leadership positions. And we teach them about staff and how to be part of a staff to work together to develop that project, whatever it might be. And each one of them that's on that staff has a special area that they are concentrating in. So one may be dealing with operations, one may be dealing with logistics, one may be dealing with personnel, one may be dealing with the social awareness type thing, and another one may be concerned about the safety and security thing, but they all work together in their field, and then they come together as a staff and they develop the product for whatever task they're going to put together. And so by having that knowledge about, okay, what is my piece of the pie? Now they're able to say how my little bit affects the big outcome. And so throughout that junior year, they're learning those type procedures. And again, we're putting them more and more to leadership positions, and we'll see them being in charge of cadets ranging from maybe as small as, a 9-person type of a squad, maybe even up to a squad leader or a platoon sergeant. Now they get in charge of 30-something people. If they're really setting the world on fire, they may end up like as a company first sergeant, or something along those lines, or a platoon leader or a company commander, because their leadership and their confidence has grown in such a way that they are ready for more and more responsibility. And then by the time they hit the senior year, I mean, they're running full throttle with it. And, they're a battalion commander, so they are the highest ranking person that's in there, or the command sergeant majors, who is the highest ranking enlisted person. And they're in charge of the whole battalion. So they've got 75 to 80 people that they are thinking about, so that when they do operations and they do events, it's not just a matter of I'm thinking about one person in particular. Now I'm thinking about the whole concept, how it is that my actions and my deeds, how does that affect the whole thing? And then when I make decisions, especially as battalion commander, he's thinking about how does that decision, the second and third order, affect the whole mission? And so it creates, again, a better way of thinking, a new way of thinking, and it's centered around or process the idea of it's more than one way of doing things. I need to be thinking about other ways to be successful when I make those decisions. Think about that second and third order effect when I make a decision. If I take something away from this person in order to support this area, how does that in turn, yes, I may be successful over here, but how does that affect back over here? And did I make that right decision?
Yeah.
And then once we
That's
go through the event, we have an after action review in which we sit down and we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly of everything that did occur.
Now, when you say event, what is that? Give me an
It
example of
could
what that
be
might be.
anything, different projects they do. One of the things that they are required is they do a service learning project, and then they plan the whole thing out as far as, how to raise money for it, what event they're wanting to do. For example, this year, our service learning project was they went through and they decided they were going to support the local nursing home. They planned it all out. They figured out how many residents were in the nursing home. They raised enough money through their fundraisers to buy each resident flowers and a card for Valentine's Day. And while that was going on inside, they had a group that was working outside, and they went and they mulched the whole building all around it, putting in new flowers, new things. And so they had different ways of dealing with it. Each company commander had its area for beautification type deal to include, who was going on in the inside. And so at that point, battalion commander had a way to say, hey, I can't be at one place at one time. So now I've got to trust my commanders and those that are at the different locations to do what I've asked them to do. Now it's a matter of me spot checking to make sure they are completing it. So once that service learning project was complete, they came back and they said, okay, let's review this thing. What went right? What went wrong? And how can we make things better in the future? So we'll take little projects like that or
Yeah.
whatever it might be. And
Yeah.
it's kind of how we do things.
Yeah. No, that's a great overview, and it's a good understanding for me too, because I did Civil Air Patrol a long time ago back in the day. That's a little different because it wasn't necessarily in a classroom school setting, but that's really cool. When you decided to pursue drones and get that into the classroom, how did that integrate into sort of that layout that you just laid out for us for kind of their progressive leadership? Which grade of students did you have learning the drones, and how did you fit that curriculum into what you were already doing?
With the drones, as you know, in order for you to get your license, you got to be 16. And so as I started looking at it and then started thinking about, we do have in our curriculum, we have different areas that we can do like labs and things.
Right.
And so we chose to kind of go with the lab, a leadership lab, and we can quit teaching the drones in that area. And then through that process, we figured out, okay, it's not just about flying these things. We got to learn something. We've got to teach these students to have something to walk away with so that they can provide for themselves and possibly get jobs in the future. When we came up with this idea, and let's do the drone side, that was one of the criteria is that, okay, what kind of career enhancing can we get out of this to make sure that the students are prepared for the next level in life or the next
Mhm.
stage in life once they graduate. That's kind of where we headed with that.
So you kind of fit it in as a leadership lab. What's your schedule like at the high school? You guys have classes every day, and how long are those class periods? And how often were you doing drones versus something else?
With us, we're a traditional school. In talking with my career tech director, he wanted something that we could spend some time in. And he was very supportive in this process and says, hey, Keith, let's make sure that we do this. And when we do it right. By doing so, we were able to spend a lot more time taking some of that leadership lab time and focusing on that. Now, we would be in a classroom environment probably 3 days a week, three, maybe four, because there are things we need to get done, like physical training and wearing uniforms and those
Mhm.
days. When that occurs, I'm not able to necessarily be on the platform with the cadets. He wanted to make sure that we carved out that we had the time to make sure it's done and it's done right. And
Like
so
3 to 4 days a week. How long are your class periods typically?
they were 1 hour. Well, in this
Okay,
case, traditional were 50 minutes.
50 minutes, yeah. So 3 to 4 days a week, 50 minutes, and then did you teach it over, how long are your semesters? Like a 18-week semester?
Yeah, it's an 18 weeks. So we had two 9 weeks type deal. When you and I were discussing, we wanted something that kind of mirrors that area that we could start and finish, if you will, with the semester. It's easy transition. And so that worked out through your curriculum there.
Okay, cool. The students are doing this, right? There's a lot of areas that are covered in the Part 107 training, from weather, airspace regulations, all these different emergency procedures, plus some flying mixed in. I guess my first question is, which part of learning to pass that exam did you think the students maybe found the most difficult or was the hardest to master?
First of all, I mean, of course, Part 107 in itself is a lot of information. To gather all that was tough in general. And I told them that when we started this, that this is going to be an everyday process, that you're going to have to study. Of course, being from the aviation world, I knew there was a lot of things dealing with airspace that they wouldn't have to know. It's not just rote memorization, but now it's applying the information. So I would say that that piece of airspace and falling into figuring out altitudes was an issue as far as for them to learn a little bit. Also, I guess as you go through the course, there are snippet of information that they need to gravitate towards and to hold on to, such as the different classes of drones. And it's not a one-time memory. I can remember today and next week I can flush it. But now it's a matter of it's introduced to me today. Tomorrow I'm going to apply it. And the next week I'm going to apply the information that I learned a couple of last week. And now I'm going to build off of it. In the aviation world, we call it scaffolding.
Yeah.
And so it is a continuous building process. Yes, you start off with the basics, but then you start learning a little bit more and a little bit more and a little more. So as you transition to the end, now you got the full and whole concept of it.
So when you were doing this with the students, I mean, how big was the class sizes that you were working with again?
Anywhere from 12 to 15,
Okay. Did you find
which is
that pretty manageable with the drone? I know it's feel like it can get a little chaotic when a bunch of people are flying drones at the same time.
it's pretty manageable. When we started flying with the drones, I can't just turn them loose outside. They need to be in an area that's definitely controlled. That's when we went to the gym. And I figured if things go really bad, the worst case scenario is that they get stuck on the ceiling. I divided them up and put them in different corners, different parts of the gymnasium floor, gave them a particular procedure or something that they needed to do. After watching the videos, now coming applying it, learning how to fly things purely manual to start with is most definitely the way to go. A lot of times, if you transition from very beginning to something as simple like a Mini 2, yes, it has altitude hold and the capability of doing all those things. You need to learn at the beginning how to do the worst case scenario. And I think about back in my military days when I was going through flight school, my very first flight that I was in the helicopter, it's called my nickel ride. And that's a fun-filled day. The IP takes me up, lets me fly around a little bit. Life is good. After all that, that's when the emergency thing starts happening. And he starts throwing emergency procedures with me and I start learning them. So that first day was a great day. The second and third and fourth and every day after that, it was
That's a
nerve-wracking
little more
sometimes
stressful.
getting
Yeah.
inside the aircraft. Yeah, because I didn't know what was going to be presented to me and how to deal with different emergencies. To learn how to fly things in a manual world so that
Mhm.
when something does go awry, that gives them the confidence that says, hey, I know how to do this if something does
Yeah.
go wrong. And I can
Yeah.
revert back to my pitch, my yaw, my roll, and I know how all this stuff works to get that drone back down safely without either hurting it or worst case scenario, hurting somebody else.
Yeah, it was funny. The story you were saying about your helicopter emergency procedures reminded me when I was getting my private pilot's license. I think I was just 18, and my brother. Sometimes, if you had family members coming around, they'd let them just ride in the back. Those little 4-seater Piper planes, single engine ones. So my little brother came. He was riding in the back. And he's just got the headset on. He's looking out the window and stuff, and he can hear us talking. And my flight instructor just randomly killed the power during the flight and said, "Oh, you lost your engines. What are you going to do?" Right? That's the simulating the emergency. Except my brother didn't see him do that. He just heard, "Oh, we lost our engines. What are you going to do?" And I'm looking around, and so he thought it was like a legit emergency. You're supposed to find a landing spot and trim your plane for all this stuff, whatever. I wasn't doing super well. I was forgetting a few things, and he's like, "David, find your landing spot. Don't forget this." And my brother's just like, "Oh my gosh, what is David doing? He's gonna kill us, all this stuff." And he said he was staying real quiet. He was just panicking inside. And then we got all the way down to whatever 500 feet, and then they hit the gas and go around. He's like, "Okay, no." And my brother was just sweating bullets back there, thinking we were about to go ditch it in the trees. And he didn't tell me till afterwards. He's like, "Dude, I thought I was gonna die."
That's the best roller coaster ride you can probably ride.
Yeah, you're right. Funny. Did anything stand out when you were doing your class with the cadets? I mean, I know you only had 10 to 12, but are there any specific stories that stood out, or times when the students were, I don't know, they're really excited about it, or somebody kind of impacted in a positive way, or any good stories you can remember from the class?
The whole year, the entire time that we've been doing this thing, the greatest thing is, I guess, part of it is when they actually get it. That light comes on, you start giving little quizzes and stuff to see, are they figuring out and can they use the information to find the answer to the problem? Whether it's altitude or whether it's a conversation you're having and you're talking about the altitude with a tower or something like that, and they start figuring out, okay, I got my tower plus 400 feet. And you go, okay, that's great. Can you go fly? And they go, well, yeah, I'm good to go. I said, now, what was your weather brief? And they're like, tell me whatever the weather brief might be, broke in at whatever. And I said, okay, so now can you go fly? And they start putting into that, hey, I'm thinking about what are my cloud clearances? 1,003. Am I there? Can I do this? What kind of airspace? When it all comes together and they go, no, sir, I can't go fly. And here's the reason why. And you gotta go, okay, now you get it. Now you're applying the information that you're being taught. They are able to take that and go with it. It's one thing to know the information. It's another thing to apply the information. Whether it's the altitude and you're now concerned about lift, in that STEM world of altitude and airspeed and lift capability, per se, thrust that the drone is producing, and you're trying to figure some of that stuff out, or you throw a question that may deal with that, and they're able to dissect the question and come up with the answer. That's when the aha moment comes on, and you go, okay, you're getting it.
Yeah, that's great. And then you had some students pass, right? Like the ones that were ready to go take the test. And
I've had last times that we've been teaching this thing, I had a total of 8 students now that gone in and they have their license.
awesome. That's cool.
Well, that's a good feeling for them to be successful and they're able to apply and use. Because I've had a couple of them saying, "Oh, Colonel, I can't wait. This summer I'm gonna be doing whatever type thing. I'm working with this realtor, and I'm gonna go take some pictures there for the house." And I go, "Oh yeah, well, you need to make sure all these different things, not just airspace, but considering how to take to that next level of instruction of, okay, what are some things you need to consider?
Yeah.
Where's the sun? How are you going to take this picture? Have you done a recon to see what this place is out before you walk over there just where you draw?"
So they out there doing jobs and stuff with it now too?
Some of them are pursuing that method. They
Yeah.
haven't gotten there yet. They're telling me, hey, my uncle, he's a realtor. He told me once I got my license, he wants me to come and take some pictures for him and stuff. So we get to kind of talk through some of those.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. So where are you, going forward with your cadets and just the future of your program? What's kind of your vision for how things will proceed from here?
Well, first semester that we're looking at is going to be dealing with the Part 107 and learning all the rules and regulations that deal with flying with the drones. Second semester, we've been working, and I want to pursue this thing like mapping.
Oh, right. Yep.
Yeah. I like to get into something along those lines because it's one thing to be able to go out and fly a drone and be able to do it correctly and legally. It's again, the trying to complete that loop is now I got information. Now what can I do with it?
Yep.
And what am I going to do with it? I think the mapping techniques and teaching them how to do those type of things and do the two-dimensional and the three-dimensional measurements and stuff, it's just going to be able to provide them with so much more. The students are already using it in their day-to-day activities, those that are licensed. For example, we will use it come next week. One of the things that our program does is that we deal with the parking at a football game. And now they're asking us to do the parking because they do such a great job. They're asking us to do parking at the graduation. And
Okay.
so what they
It's the curse of doing
actually,
a good job. You get get
you
more
know
work out of
what?
it.
Yeah, no good deed ever goes unpunished. What they do is they will have, again, my battalion commander who is in charge of running the operation will have, which is either he or she is a licensed drone pilot, or I will put a licensed drone pilot with him. And then as things are progressing and things are moving, what'll happen is that I'll let them go fly the drone, and they're able to get visibility about incoming traffic. So now what they're doing is that the battalion commander is making decisions ahead and taking that information in ahead of time. If he needs to change the flow of traffic, he's talking to me and talking to me about it and what he recommends, then I can contact the police and say, hey, I recommend, for the next 2 or 3 minutes in order to take off pressure to send them a different way. Now I've got a senior or a soon to be senior making those type of decisions and taking the information that is provided by a drone and now using it, like, for example, just for intelligence wise. And they're able to make it in their decision making process, take more information in to make a better decision. So it's not what to do in life, but how to use what you know. How can you incorporate that into your decision or your thought process?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I was thinking about when you were talking about managing the parking, something cool you can do once you get into doing more mapping with drones is before the event, you could go and you could fly, that grid pattern over your area and create like a pretty up-to-date map. You can make annotations on it, use it kind of for planning ahead of time I don't know if you guys just have straight up parking lots or you use different grass lots or things like that, but it'd be good to sort of do your pre-planning on that and then use the drone again for the monitoring like you're doing.
My vision, if you will,
Yeah.
is the parking lot we have. One of them, well, most of it, I should say, is gravel parking lot. And so every summer, cadets get together and we paint the parking lot. That's one of our fundraiser type. So what I'm wanting to do is take the drone, map it out, and now I can paint the parking lot using drone technology.
Yeah.
Because I would love to be able to do that and then put it in there and figure out lines and everything, and then do GPS technology to guide my painter and to make my line straight. And then in the future, maybe make it robotic, because one of the things we've got here is in the AREP high school is we have a robotic program. And so if I can incorporate other career tech or other activities into the things we're doing, that just makes the career tech environment just that much better. We'll map it out, draw it out, then have robotics group get together and come up with a motor to drive the painting machine to actually go and paint the parking lot.
Yeah. That'd be really cool.
That would be my capstone.
Let me know when you do it. We'll get you back on here to talk about it.
Oh yeah, we'll video and we'll send it to you.
That's awesome. Well, Keith, man, I appreciate you coming on and chatting with us, sharing your experience. And it's cool to hear what your cadets are doing with drones and how they're actually getting to use it in the real world, helping out parking and stuff like that. So it's cool to hear some of them passing their exams too, becoming licensed drone pilots. But appreciate you talking with us.
Sure, not a problem. I appreciate you providing me the opportunity to come talk with. It's a great program.
Yeah, you bet. All right. Well, we'll catch you later, Keith. Thanks.
All right, bud. Take care.